My contract is almost up, and so the day that this podcast and this video goes live means that my time at that staffing agency is done. And in this instance, we're parting on good terms, and I still want to go over what happens when things don't pan out the way that you think they will, or when your potential plans don't come to fruition. Keeping everything simple, let's jump right in. One of the important things here that I do want to stress is that it's so important that whenever you're going into something new, you want to know what the expectations are. And I mean this in terms of if there's already something that's predetermined and you're going into an existing system, finding out the expectations. This does determine so much of what your success will be. So while I was in university and while I was in high school, I had called it almost meeting the A or just getting the A. And so this is like the best analogy I can come up with, in which essentially if you were to take any class and you follow the entire syllabus, you follow the entire criteria to the T, like everything was done, you hit all the points that they wanted you to in essays, you turned in all the projects on time with all the key points and all the key material, you would inevitably get the A. And that's because you're doing the work, you're meeting the expectations. And if you're able to do that, that ultimately helps you succeed in that class. And if you were to use this same principle in work, it'd help you succeed in your job and in your field. Now, there's something that also comes about this where you can maintain these expectations, but if you don't exceed them, that's where we kind of have what I refer to as like stagnation, where for the most part, the expectation that I was given for this role was pretty clear. It was actually very clear of what I would have to do on a weekly basis to be successful. And through a conversation with my boss and one of my higher ups, it was pretty easy for both of us to say that while I was meeting expectations to a degree, it was still me falling under expectations by 1, 2, 3 points consistently every single week, and therein lies the problem. I wasn't able to be fully successful in that role because if I'm just meeting expectations or performing slightly below, then the only thing that I'm doing is maintaining the status quo of that position or of that group. And that's not what they were looking for. And that is something I agree with. For me, I now have a better understanding of what it takes to work in staffing and what it takes to work in recruiting at such a high volume, because in this instance, it was a high volume game as opposed to a high quality and high quantity game. And that's a very different field, and that's a very different way to look at everything. And so the thing I'm encouraging then is if you're going into an existing system, really find out and hone in on what the expectations are, because if you know exactly what's needed of you when you get in there, maybe that job description had a couple other things that wasn't on there and you have to really figure it out and ask them exactly what it is, or maybe you're actually able to not only meet the job description, but you're able to do a bit more and go above beyond that. That, I think, will help determine so much more of your success rather than just feeling it'd be a good fit or feeling like your skills do match up. But if you aren't able to meet the expectation, meet the criteria, and meet the outcome, that in of itself determines everything. And so if things don't go the way you thought they would or your plans aren't really coming together, know your expectations and understand the outcomes that are going to be required of you, because that ultimately determines how successful you'll be in that role, in that field, and in that career. And in speaking of just knowing expectations and outcomes, it's also so important to understand that you can't improve what you don't track. So I'm going to use the gym here as my example because I think for most people, it might be at least understood in a way that can be crossed over to business. So you don't improve what you don't track. And what I mean by this is pretty simple, because if you're able to see that from 1 week to the next, you're improving by 1%, you're improving by 1 basis point, whatever it is, you can see that progress. However, If you were to never track it, then you'd never know. So there's this idea of progressive overload in the gym, in which every single week you should technically be getting stronger. You should be able to lift more, you should be able to do more reps, you should be able to hold something under tension for longer. Your strength should be improving. And this is, as long as you're doing everything else as you should, that compounds itself into those long-term gains, those long-term effects of improved strength and improved stamina. And so in this instance of the current job, it was me tracking my progress and seeing that trend of I'm meeting expectations and I'm also performing slightly below them on average. So that's not a good trend. It's me seeing that I'm not technically, quote unquote, progressively overloading my expectations for the week and my criteria to say, okay, I'm actually doing better. I'm actually increasing every single week what I'm doing. My output is increasing. My quality of candidate search is increasing. But for me, the case was hitting only that kind of weekly minimum and then also missing that weekly minimum. And that's not a good trend I want to see. And so you have to then understand and ask yourself, how are you tracking your progress? Because for me, it was easy when I was given a clear and precise goal every single week to hit. And for those goals, it was, okay, I have to hit these. And if I do that, that means I'm on progress and that I'm helping keep this desk on progress for the team, for my boss, and for the company. And the thing is, if I were to never track that, I would never probably have agreed with them right away of, okay, this is not probably the best fit for me. And being able to look back at my data and say, okay, no, I see exactly what you're looking at as well. And I've come to the same conclusion that this role is not the best fit for me. I might be better as an in-house recruiter. I might be better as someone who works in payroll or benefits, someone who has time to really guide someone and help them through different stages of their career or face different problems, as opposed to having such a quick rotation and I'm going to call it associate turnover, because it's almost like turning over the inventory of like a Costco or a Target or something like that, where every single year they go through a certain amount of their inventory, so it turns over. And in this instance, there was a certain amount of turnover of getting people in the door and out the door that I was supposed to have. And I just wasn't meeting that through my tracking of the data and through their tracking of the data. So if some of your plans are falling apart or they aren't, again, going the way you thought they would, it's important that you ask yourself, how am I tracking my progress? And from there, how do the metrics I'm using really relate to the ultimate outcome that I need and the ultimate goal that I want to have? Because it's, again, very simple to get lost in kind of the frenzy of day-to-day activities, especially if you are working in an industry in which you're working with people, because there's, a large variety of people that you'll work with and a large variety of problems that you'll encounter. But you have to be able to zone in on what are the key metrics that impact my ability to do my job, and how am I tracking these to see that I'm improving on them every single week. I also think it's important to point out here that a mismatch of skills and experience actually just provides you with one of the greatest learning opportunities you can have. So for the current role that I've been in, it's not that, again, that I couldn't do the job or that I wouldn't be able to eventually be able to exceed expectations here. It was just understanding that these skills that I have that come intuitively to me that I know I'm good at don't actually align with the current expectation and design of that position I was in. Because it's not that I'm not able to source for a good candidate, I'm not able to hold a good interview, do coaching conversations. This is all stuff I've done before and stuff that I'm actually pretty good at. The problem is the duration, and because I spent so long focusing on my ability to be empathetic and my ability to be mindful and self-aware and trying to help impart that on others too, I like the ability to actively work with someone long term and be able to help guide them a little bit more and be able to help them find a position that truly is the best fit for them. Like it's a vocational fit that their skills and their ability and their interests align. And it's never going to be perfect, and that's okay. But this is what I mean when I say the mismatch is an opportunity to learn, because coming away from this, I can confidently say that I know what my skill sets are a bit more clearly now, and I know a bit better what type of work I'm going to be best suited for, whether that's or whenever that is I build my own company or agency, or when it is me going into another role, learning more in that area too. And so this is where I want you to understand as well that if you feel that the job you're in right now, it works well with your skills, but maybe you're not meeting expectations, or maybe the goal that you have and the plan that you're following doesn't feel quite right, understand that this is a learning opportunity instead, because you can see a bit more clearly of like what exactly isn't working, what exactly does make me actually really enjoy this, and then how can I merge these two things together, these two thoughts together, and come to a new understanding of who I am as a person, where I want to go with my vocation and my career as a person, and what else can this job teach me while I'm here. Because ultimately, yes, we're going to go through many different jobs throughout our career, because a career is a compilation of all the jobs that you've held. And the more that you're able to learn in a role, whether that's learning something that you know that you like, or learning about something you actually come to understand that you don't like, that is both an invaluable use of your time, because you're able to say, okay, I now have a more clear picture, a better understanding, and a better intuitive understanding of where I want to go on my career path and on my career journey. And that is one of the best benefits that you can take away from a role in which, again, the skills and the expectation mismatch may not be quite what it needs to be. And because it also lets you try again, because it's not the end of the world if the skills you have are good for the role, but you can't meet expectations. It is an ability and a chance to try again and improve them, or find another role in which you can properly utilize your skills right out the gate, in which the expectations and skills line up even better. With saying try again, though, as well, it's kind of like Edgin from the D&D Honor Among Thieves movie, where, spoilers if you haven't seen it, him talking to his team saying that he's the champion of failures, and he will only ever truly fail if he stops trying to fail. Now, that sounds very dumb coming out of my mouth as well, but we're gonna run with this for a second here. It's this idea that you only ever truly fail if you stop trying. You only ever fail if you don't take something away from a situation. You don't learn something from it. So we all have the innate ability to try again at anything that we're wanting to get better at, anything that we're faced with. Now, ultimately, if we're using this in the context of, our jobs and our careers, there's going to be points where we won't know something. We're not going to know how to do something right away. And that's okay, because we can fail at it. And this is why so many companies, so many jobs, especially in leadership, emphasize this idea of failing fast. Because if you're able to fail fast and learn fast at the same time, that's going to exponentially improve your ability to not only lead your team, but to grow and develop, because you're going to be able to compile so much more information, so much more experience in a shortened amount of time. So if I had like person A and person B, and person A, takes a lot of time to learn something, they are very hesitant about taking risk. And so in their role, they aren't growing as much because they kind of stay more so in their comfort zone, they will learn and they will improve. However, the rate in which they improve and the rate at which they are growing is going to be exponentially different than, say, person B, who maybe constantly jumps out of their comfort zone a little bit too much in terms of the risks they're taking, but they are being very intentional about trying to fail fast and learn even faster, because they understand that if you quote unquote fail, the only time in which you truly are failing and not going to be able to move forward is if you stop trying, and is if you stop trying to learn something new from the situation you just came from. And so between the two of these different types of people, you want to be the latter. You want to be the type of person that can fail fast, and you can try to look at the situation and say, okay, where did I go wrong? What was the situation what was the piece of the situation that caused me to fail? How can I avoid that next time? Or what were the key factors that made the outcome happen this way? And how can I change these for next time, if I end up in the situation again, or if someone else ends up in the situation again? And that's why it's so important that you understand that you only fail if you stop trying. And you will fail at some point or another in your life and in your career, and it is okay. The important thing is that you don't let that failure, you don't let that lesson stop you, because every failure is just a lesson in disguise as long as you look at it from a new perspective. So what happens next? Well, that's a great question. So for right now, I don't have my next path lined up yet. I have a couple options now, and this is where, if you're experiencing something like this, I want to emphasize what happens next is entirely up to you. So the thing that, again, based on what I just said, I encourage you is that you don't stop trying. You learn to pick yourself up here and move forward. It's learning what you can and still coming away from a certain job or a certain field and using that opportunity, being grateful for that opportunity, and still forging ahead and learning all you can as you go. So for me, there's, again, anxiety around this idea that I'm not going to have a job at the end of the week. And I don't disagree with my boss on her evaluation of what I could do in that position and in that role. And so this is where you have to be able to pivot, and you have to be okay with things not going the way you thought they would. So for me, I had understood that I could do well in this position. However, I'm not, I would say, quote unquote, aggressive enough to be the best fit to grow that desk, which essentially just means getting more people in, getting new business, and helping get more people out to work. The volume in which was needed of me was not something that I could easily do, where maintaining it and hitting that kind of minimum was something that I could easily do, but I wasn't pushing myself enough. And that's something that I recognize, and that is a learning opportunity for me. And so I asked myself again, what happens next? Where do I go next from here? And it's something that we're all going to be faced with at some point or another throughout our lives. We're going to be faced with this question of what's next. Whether you're graduating high school, graduating university, you're going to inevitably be asked, what are you doing next? What happens after this? And if you're changing careers or you are changing jobs, people will ask you, well, what's next? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And all of this, I think, is just a culmination of chances to learn and opportunities to try something new and be grateful for the ones that come. I'm grateful for the fact that for the past 3 months as a temp recruiter, I've had the ability to work with a great team. I've had the ability to work with some very interesting candidates, but also see the impact, the positive impact that comes from helping people get out to work and honestly can change the trajectory of people's lives. I'm grateful for that opportunity. And what happens next, I'll just have to find out. I don't have a set plan just yet. I have a long-term vision and a long-term goal, and I'm working towards it. However, my next immediate step is something that I'm not totally sure of just yet. And I think for me, that again causes anxiety, but also it causes excitement too, because that means the possibilities before me are still endless. And how I want to get to my eventual end goal is still entirely in my hands and entirely in my control. And that's, again, not the mindset for everybody. But the thing that I do want to encourage you to understand is when that question comes up of what's next, you take a moment to consider, where did you just come from? And then where do you want to go? And how do you want to get there? Those 3 points will help determine your answer for that what's next question, even if you kind of hate hearing it. I also know that it is easier said than done to kind of have that resiliency and be able to say, okay, I'm coming away from this and I'm grateful for the opportunity. Like, it can still hurt and it can still be a letdown when you think it was something that would be a good long-term fit for you or a good opportunity in the long term. So I encourage you again to learn new skills, especially ones that help strengthen your mental fortitude, because I encourage you to be resilient. The fact that you'll fail at times in life, the fact that your plan won't always go according to the plan, and at some points you're going to have to toss it up and throw it away and do something new. I encourage you to be resilient, be adaptable, and understand that these failures are lessons, that you yourself will never truly fail as long as you keep trying, and that as long as you understand the expectations and the outcomes that are needed of you or that you want to create, these 3 factors will help you not only grow as an individual, they will help push you forward. So that way your momentum doesn't just stop with one opportunity. It doesn't stop with the next opportunity. It keeps propelling you forward. And all of these things, again, are skills to learn. It's a skill to be resilient. It's a skill to look for the next opportunity. And it's a skill to be able to say, where did I go wrong and what can I do better? And these are all skills that I believe you personally can develop. And so that's what I encourage you to do. I encourage you, when someone asks you what's next, or you're in the midst of maybe a change like I am again, asking yourself, what is the next opportunity, or how can I create the next opportunity? Because opportunities present themselves to those who prepare. So how are you preparing today? Well, that's my update for you guys for the week, and that is the podcast episode for the week. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the video so that way it does promote it to the YouTube algorithm. That helps it out so much. If you're watching this or listening to this on a podcast app, make sure that you do give us a rating. It helps other people discover the podcast. And comment down below, are you in the midst of a change? And if so, what is that change you're going through right now? I hope you have an amazing day, you amazing people, and I will see you all in the next episode. Now go out there and do great things.